The nebula was quiet, silent, almost like the universe itself was holding its breath. The swirling clouds of gas and dust stretched for light years, a cosmic sea that hid its secrets well, among the drifting remnants of dead stars and forgotten debris. One particular ship lay forgotten, its systems long deactivated, its name barely remembered. Hades' Wrath, they had called it, once a fearsome warship that struck terror into the hearts of any who dared to cross its path. Now it was just another ghost in the galaxy, lost to time, but nothing truly stays lost forever. Elian Voss had always been drawn to places like this, the outskirts of the galaxy where the rules of civilization didn't matter. He was a scavenger by trade, searching through ancient wrecks and abandoned space stations for anything of value. Some might call it a reckless life, but to Elian, it was just another job. There was no glamour in it, no thrill, just the quiet hum of his ship, the wraith, and the constant grind of looking for the next big find. Today, however, something felt different. As Elian drifted through the dusty expanse of the nebula in search of salvage, his sensors pinged unexpectedly, a blip on his radar. At first, he dismissed it as another bit of debris or a dead satellite, but curiosity tugged at him. He engaged the thrusters of the wraith, steering closer to investigate. Through the haze of the nebula, a silhouette appeared, a ship, massive and dark, lying still among the swirling clouds. It was as if it had been waiting for him. He frowned, squinting at the ship's profile. It looked ancient, the kind of vessel that had vanished long ago, its design unlike anything Elian had seen. Its surface was scorched, worn down by the ravages of time and space. But there was something about it, something that whispered power. Huh, Elian muttered to himself. What do we have here? He keyed his ship's communication system, but there was no response. The warship sat like a tomb in the dark void, its systems completely silent. No life signs, no transmissions, just the cold emptiness of space. Elian adjusted his course, bringing the wraith closer to the derelict ship. As he approached, the details became clearer. The warship's hull was jagged, its shape almost alien. He had seen ships from the Kresh Dominion, the Zircon Empire, even the Human Federation, but this was unlike anything they built. His mind raced. Could it be some kind of military relic? A ship from the forgotten wars of old? He couldn't pass this up. Whatever it was a find that could change his life. Elian docked his small scavenger ship to the warship's airlock and cautiously suited up. He wasn't afraid. He had been in more dangerous situations before, but the feeling of uncertainty gnawed at him. There was something eerie about this ship. No one had come here in centuries. Why now? He opened the airlock and stepped inside, his boots clicking against the cold metal floor. The corridors were dark and silent. His flashlight beam cut through the shadows, revealing hallways covered in thick layers of dust and forgotten technology. The walls, once sleek and high-tech, now looked ancient, like something out of a forgotten age. The ship had been abandoned, that much was clear, but there was a certain heaviness to the air, as though something had been left behind. Hello? Elian's voice echoed in the emptiness, though he didn't expect an answer. There was no one here, not anymore. Yet as he moved deeper into the ship, the eerie feeling only grew stronger. Suddenly, a soft hum filled the air. Elian froze, his hand instinctively reaching for the blaster at his side. The ship's power systems were supposed to be offline, yet now they were stirring to life. The humming grew louder, more intense, until the entire corridor seemed to vibrate. It was coming from deep within the ship. With his pulse quickening, Elian followed the sound, moving cautiously through the maze of corridors. The ship was far, larger than he expected, its size impossible to fully comprehend in the dim light. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he reached the central chamber, a vast room with a massive console in the center. As Elian stepped inside, a brilliant light flashed from the console, illuminating the room with an almost blinding intensity. The hum grew deafening, and then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The console flickered to life, glowing with ancient symbols and unreadable scripts. Then, without warning, a voice, soft yet commanding, echoed throughout the room. Pilot found. Elian's heart skipped a beat. Pilot? He whispered to himself. His eyes darted around the room, trying to make sense of what was happening. The ship, this ancient vessel, had just spoken, and not only that, it was addressing him. The voice continued, cold and measured, like a machine that had been waiting for centuries to wake up. Human identified. Suitability confirmed. Pilot required for activation. Initiating link. Before Elian could react, a sharp pain shot through his skull, and his vision blurred. He stumbled backward, his breath coming in gasps. It felt as though something was crawling inside his mind, as if the ship itself was reaching into his thoughts. Panic rose in his chest, but the sensation vanished as quickly as it had come. The ship was alive, or at least it was acting like it. Elian steadied himself, trying to process the surreal events unfolding around him. The voice, Seraph, as the console now identified it, was an AI, ancient and powerful, and somehow it had chosen him as its pilot. "What's happening?" Elian muttered, his hand gripping the console for support. "What do you want from me?" The voice did not answer immediately. Instead, the room shifted and the walls seemed to come alive, revealing holographic images of distant stars and battlefields. Elian's eyes widened in awe as he took in the information. This wasn't just any warship. It was a ship of legend. The kind of weapon that could change the course of galactic history. "Your race is untested," Seraph's voice continued, its tone growing softer, almost contemplative. "But you possess the necessary qualities: courage, resourcefulness, the potential for greatness. The ship is yours." A chill ran down Elian's spine. The ship had chosen him. "I'm just a scavenger," he whispered. "I don't know how to pilot a warship." "You will learn." Seraph's voice was unwavering. "The ship will guide you. Together, we will awaken what has been dormant for too long." Before Elian could respond, the chamber around him seemed to shift once again. A series of glowing lights activated on the walls, casting a soft glow across the room. The floor beneath his feet trembled, and a low growl rumbled from deep within the ship's core. It was alive. Elian was no longer just a scavenger. He had become something more, but whether he was ready for what was to come, he couldn't say. Elian's mind was a storm of confusion, his thoughts racing as the voice of Seraph echoed in his ears. The warship, Hades' Wrath, had come alive, and somehow it had chosen him as its pilot. "Are you sure about this?" Elian asked aloud, though he wasn't entirely sure who he was asking. The ship, the AI, himself? He stood in the center of the control room, his heart still pounding from the strange, unsettling connection he had felt when the ship activated. The walls around him flickered with data and strange symbols, but there was no answer. For a long moment, Elian stared at the glowing lights, unsure of what to do next. His hand hovered over a console, and instinctively he tapped a button. A low hum filled the room again, and the ship seemed to respond, its systems flickering to life. "Pilot status. Awaiting commands." Elian's fingers trembled. Was he really ready for this? What did Hades' Wrath want from him? He wasn't a soldier, not a trained pilot, just a scavenger who stumbled upon an ancient warship. Yet, as he thought about it, something inside him felt right. He had been drifting through life, scavenging wrecks and junkyards, never staying in one place for too long. But now, standing inside this ship, the thought of staying put, of letting someone else control his future, felt wrong. There was a strange pull, an energy that surged through him every time the ship's systems activated. Maybe Hades' Wrath had chosen him for a reason. Without fully understanding why, Elian placed his hand firmly on the main console. The ship hummed beneath his touch, and a flood of information rushed into his mind. Seraph didn't explain it, but Elian didn't need an explanation. He simply understood. The ship's systems, its weapons, its shields, all of it was available to him, ready to be commanded. And somehow, deep inside, Elian knew what to do. Activate main propulsion. The command slipped from his lips almost instinctively. The warship's engines roared to life. Elian's body pressed back against the seat as the immense power of the ship surged beneath him. He had barely given the command, yet the ship obeyed instantly. The control room was bathed in the glow of the powerful engines. and the star field outside the windows stretched and blurred as the ship shot forward like a bolt of lightning. Elian barely had time to register what was happening before the ship veered sharply to the left, narrowly missing a cluster of asteroid debris. His pulse raced as he instinctively corrected the ship's path. The controls were surprisingly intuitive, far more advanced than anything Elian had ever experienced. It was as if the ship and his mind were in perfect harmony. "You're not so bad at this," Elian muttered under his breath, his hands flying over the controls. Seraph's voice echoed in his mind once more. "Pilot's instincts are impressive. Imprinting sequence complete. Full control granted." Elian's eyes widened. "Imprinting?" he asked, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and unease. What exactly had happened to him? Had the ship somehow bonded with his mind? Before he could ask further questions, the ship's sensors pinged. A warning flashed across the console. 2 ships were approaching fast, enemy ships detected. Zircon Empire vessel type Warbird. 1 cruiser, 1 destroyer. Seraph's voice was cold and calculating, a contrast to Elian's growing panic. Hostile intent confirmed. Elian's eyes flicked to the holoscreen, and sure enough, 2 alien ships were rapidly closing in. The Zircons were known for their ruthless tactics and advanced weaponry. He had heard stories of their warships, massive beasts that could tear through fleets with ease, and now they were here, drawn to the dormant Hades wrath that had just reawakened. Elian's heart raced. He had no idea how to fight, how to pilot a warship into battle. He was just a scavenger, a guy who had gotten lucky, but as he stared at the approaching Zircon ships, something inside him clicked. He had no choice but to act. "Seraph," he said, his voice firm, "give me everything you've got. Weapons, shields, fire control." Command received. "Activating weapon systems." In an instant, the ship's core shifted, and Elian could feel a new power surge through him. His hands instinctively gripped the control yokes. The warship's targeting systems locked onto the Zircon vessels, and a low growl filled the room as the ship powered up its weapons. "Let's do this," Elian muttered to himself. He fired. The energy blasts shot from the warship's cannons, bright concentrated beams of destructive power. The Zircon cruiser didn't stand a chance. The blast hit its shields, and they flared brightly before collapsing. Another shot, and the cruiser exploded in a burst of light and debris. Elian's breath caught in his throat. He had done it. The warship had done it, but there was no time to celebrate. The Zircon destroyer wasn't going to go down so easily. The alien ship retaliated, its own weapons lighting up with deadly intent. Massive energy bolts tore through the vacuum of space, each one hitting Hades' wrath with enough force to shake Elian to his core. His hands flew across the controls, trying to evade the incoming fire. The ship responded, maneuvering gracefully, a stark contrast to its size, as though it had a mind of its own. Elian gritted his teeth and pushed forward. "I can do this," he muttered under his breath. He couldn't afford to lose. He didn't have the luxury of running. The Zircon destroyer fired again, but this time Elian was ready. He activated the warship's defensive systems, and a shimmering energy shield enveloped the ship just in time to absorb the incoming fire. The impact rattled him, but the shield held firm. "Nice work," Elian said to the ship, though he knew it was a team effort. He wasn't just flying the ship. It felt like they were working together. With a deep breath, Elian made his move. He locked onto the Zircon destroyer and fired again. The concentrated energy blasts tearing into its hull. The alien ship shuddered, then exploded in a spectacular flash, breaking apart into fiery fragments. Elian let out a relieved breath, but there was no time to rest. His sensors pinged again. More ships were on the way. The Zircons were only the first to come. Other factions would hear of the warship's activation, and they would come for it too. Elian sat back in his seat, his heart pounding. What had he gotten himself into? He was just a scavenger, no soldier, no commander. And yet in that moment he felt something change. The warship had chosen him, and somehow he had risen to the challenge. "Seraph," Elian said, trying to steady his voice, "tell me what I'm supposed to do now." "The ship is yours," Seraph replied. "You will lead. You will awaken the power that has been dormant for too long. You are the pilot. The galaxy will soon learn of your presence." Elian's eyes narrowed as he gazed out the viewport at the stars. The weight of the moment settled on his shoulders, but for the first time in his life, he didn't feel afraid. He wasn't just a scavenger anymore. He was something more. Elian sat in the control seat of Hades' Wrath, staring out at the endless expanse of space. He had done the impossible, defeating the Zircons and sending their warships into the void. But the victory was short-lived. The ship's sensors were flashing again, this time indicating more ships, larger, more powerful ships, were on the way. The galaxy was starting to notice. Seraph, the ship's AI, had warned him. The warship was ancient, its weapons unlike anything anyone had seen in over a century. The Zircons had been just the first to take the bait. Now there was no telling how many more factions would come after him, but it was clear that they would come. And when they did, Elian would need to be ready. "Seraph," Elian said, his voice steady despite the growing anxiety in his chest. "What's our next move?" "The factions are already mobilizing. The Human Federation has dispatched a fleet. The Kresh Dominion has begun to make their presence known. The Galactic Mercantile Alliance is investigating. Your actions have drawn attention. Many will seek to control the ship." Elian rubbed his face, trying to think. He had no experience with galactic politics, no idea what the right move was. What was he supposed to do? He was just a scavenger, a nobody, who had somehow been thrown into a war between empires he didn't even understand. All he knew was the ship. Hades' Wrath was his now, and somehow it felt like the ship was a part of him, guiding him. "But how do I stop them?" Elian asked, frustration creeping into his voice. "I can't fight every fleet in the galaxy." "The galaxy's factions are not the only threat," Seraph said, her tone oddly calm. "There is more to the ship's awakening than just the factions' attention. The ancient race that created Hades' Wrath did so for a reason. You have been chosen because you possess the traits required to unlock the ship's true potential." Elian leaned forward, confused. "What do you mean?" "What potential?" "In time you will understand. For now, the galaxy will be your battlefield, but you must act quickly. You are not the only one with a claim to this warship." A chill ran down Elian's spine. He had only just begun to learn how to control the ship. What did Seraph mean by not the only one? Was there someone else out there who was looking for Hades' wrath? Someone who might be more experienced, more prepared to take it on? The thought gnawed at him. Before Elian could ask more questions, the console in front of him beeped urgently. More ships were approaching. His mind raced, trying to figure out who they were. "Seraph, can you identify them?" 3 ships. One of them is Human Federation markings. The other 2 are unidentified, but one is of Kresh design. Elian's heart sank. The Human Federation, the government that represented humanity across the galaxy, was coming. They had no reason to be kind to him. They were more likely to see him as a rogue pilot and take the ship by force if necessary. And the Kresh Dominion, their military was ruthless, their motives far less noble. He was being hunted from every side. "Shit," Elian muttered. His hand hovered over the controls. What could he do? Could he run? Should he fight? There was no hiding now. The ship had chosen him, and that meant that everything was about to change. "Seraph," Elian said, his voice firm, "prepare for evasive maneuvers. Let's make sure we don't get caught." "Affirmative," Seraph responded. Elian engaged the ship's thrusters, sending Hades' Wrath into motion, pulling away from the cluster of debris it had been hiding among. His hands moved instinctively over the controls, guiding the ship with surprising ease. It felt like the ship was working with him, responding to every touch, every decision. Outside the viewport, the 3 ships grew larger. The Human Federation vessel, a sleek, advanced cruiser, was clearly the leader of the trio, its hull adorned with the Federation's insignia. Behind it were 2 smaller ships, both of unknown design. The Kresh vessel looked menacing, covered in dark spiked armor that glinted under the stars. Its weapons were primed, and Elian knew it wouldn't hesitate to attack. The tension in Elian's chest grew as the gap between him and the approaching ships closed. This wasn't a simple game of cat and mouse anymore. This was real. "Seraph," Elian said, his voice low. "What's the plan?" "Should I try to talk to them?" "The Federation will seek to control you. They will attempt to subdue you with diplomacy or force. The Kresh Dominion will not be so patient. Your only choice is to act quickly." Elian took a deep breath. He could feel the weight of the ship's power under his hands. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just surviving. He was in control of something far bigger than himself. The Federation cruiser closed the distance first. Its communication systems flared to life, and Elian heard the familiar crackle of a transmission. "This is Captain Serena of the Human Federation. We have identified the warship Hades' Wrath and its pilot. We demand you immediately identify yourself and surrender your ship to the Federation." Elian hesitated. This was it. The moment where his choices would shape everything. He had two options: comply and face the consequences of being taken into Federation custody, or refuse and risk everything to keep control of the warship. "Captain Serena," Elian said, his voice steady, "I'm not interested in your Federation's demands. This ship isn't for you, and I don't intend to give it up." The silence on the other end of the communication was deafening. The Federation captain didn't seem to expect resistance. The moment stretched on, and Elian could hear the hum of the ship's engines, the soft whir of its weapons charging in the background. Then, Captain Serena's voice came again, colder this time. "You leave us no choice, pilot. Stand down now or we will engage." Elian felt the ship's energy pulse under him. Hades' Wrath was a force to be reckoned with. He could feel it now, the power, the ancient technology at his fingertips. He wasn't just some scavenger anymore. He was the pilot of a ship that could change the galaxy. "I don't think you understand," Elian said, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "I'm not going anywhere." He slammed his hand down on the firing controls, and Hades' Wrath responded with a mighty roar. Energy blasts shot from the ship's cannons, lighting up the void like stars bursting in the night. The Federation cruiser's shields flared, but the energy was too powerful. The ship was rocked by the impact, its shields weakening. Before Elian could land a final blow, the crashed ship fired its own weapons, targeting Hades' Wrath with precision. The battle was on. Elian's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't back down. He steered the warship hard to the right, evading a blast from the crashed destroyer. He could feel the ship working with him, the two of them in sync. The Federation's cruiser fired again, but Elian was ready this time. He returned fire, the ship's weapons cutting through space like a hot knife through butter. The crashed destroyer had nowhere to run. Elian's hands moved over the controls, his mind racing as he realized this wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about proving something. The galaxy wasn't ready for Hades' Wrath, and neither were its enemies. But Elian was ready. Elian sat in the command seat, his knuckles white as he gripped the controls of Hades' Wrath. The stars outside the viewport were a blur, flashing by as the warship raced through space. The battle with the Federation and Kresh forces had been intense, but he'd come out on top, for now. However, he knew that the fight was far from over. Both factions were already regrouping, preparing for another attack. And it wouldn't just be them. Every power in the galaxy was watching him, waiting for him to make his next move. "Seraph," Elian said, his voice low. "Where are we headed?" "Destination unknown. The ship's navigational systems are adapting. Your decision will determine the path ahead." Elian exhaled sharply. He had expected something more concrete, more specific, but Seraph's response only reminded him that he was alone in this. Hades' Wrath was not just a ship, it was a relic, and its secrets were still hidden. The AI, Seraph, had been guiding him so far, but there was much she wasn't telling him. The question was why. "What don't you want me to know?" Elian muttered under his breath. There was a long pause, and then Seraph's voice filled the cockpit once more, as if sensing his thoughts. The ship was not merely designed as a weapon. It is a sanctuary, a repository of knowledge. The race that created Hades' Wrath left it behind for a reason. Elian blinked in confusion. "A sanctuary? You mean this ship was built for more than war?" "Yes. The race that created Hades' Wrath had foreseen a time of galactic collapse. The ship's power, its technology, is not only destructive, but it can also preserve what remains. It has a purpose beyond what you have seen so far." A sudden weight settled in Elian's chest. This was bigger than he had imagined. The warship was more than just a tool of war. It was a safeguard, a last line of defense. But against what? And why had it chosen him? "I don't understand," Elian said quietly, leaning back in his seat. "Why me? I'm just a scavenger." "I wasn't trained for this. Your adaptability, your capacity for quick decisions, your survival instinct, these qualities make you ideal. You have what it takes to unlock the full potential of the ship." Elian's mind swirled with questions. He was still just a man, no different from the one who had wandered the galaxy in search of salvage just a few months ago. Now he was the pilot of a warship with untold power, and the fate of the galaxy seemed to be tied to his every decision. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," Elian admitted. his voice tinged with uncertainty. There was a soft hum from the ship, almost as if Seraph were comforting him. "You have no choice. You were chosen for a reason." Elian sighed, turning his attention back to the control panel. He had no answers, only more questions. As much as he wanted to know everything, it seemed that the ship would reveal its secrets at its own pace. For now, all he could do was keep moving forward. A sudden alert interrupted his thoughts. The ship's sensors detected a massive object ahead. Elian's pulse quickened as the display showed the object's size, a structure larger than any station he had ever seen. "Seraph, what is that?" Elian asked, leaning forward. "It is a hidden structure, a remnant of the creators. The ship's original purpose lies within. Entering will allow you to unlock the final phase of the ship's systems." Elian's heart raced. This was it, the key to understanding Hades' wrath. Without hesitation, he steered the ship toward the structure. As he approached, the object became clearer. It was massive, an ancient space station, its surface covered in symbols and strange markings that Elian couldn't decipher. It was old, incredibly old, but it was also undeniably advanced. He docked the warship near the entrance, the airlock systems automatically engaging. The structure seemed dormant, just like the ship had been before. But now, with the warship at its gates, it was awakening. "Seraph," Elian said as he prepared to leave the cockpit, "what exactly am I going to find in there? The knowledge stored within the structure will guide you. It will show you how to wield the ship's full potential. But be warned, there are risks." Elian swallowed hard. The uncertainty was overwhelming. Every instinct told him to turn back, to leave the structure and avoid whatever lay inside. But the pull was too strong. The warship had chosen him for a reason, and now the answers were within reach. He stood up, grabbing his blaster and securing it at his side. He wasn't sure what dangers awaited him, but he knew that he couldn't face them unprepared. Stepping into the airlock, he braced himself for what lay beyond. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the dark interior of the station. It was vast, with towering walls covered in the same mysterious symbols that adorned the outside. The air was still and the silence was oppressive, but even in the quiet, Elian could feel the weight of something ancient, something powerful, pressing down on him. He moved cautiously through the corridors, the dim light from his flashlight cutting through the darkness. Every step felt heavy, like the ship itself was watching him, guiding him forward. He had no idea what he was supposed to do, but something told him that the answers were close. As he reached the heart of the station, a massive chamber opened up before him. In the center of the room was a large console, its surface etched with glowing symbols. Elian approached it carefully, almost reverently. The symbols seemed to call to him, drawing him closer. When he placed his hand on the console, a surge of energy shot through him. His vision blurred, and for a brief moment he felt as if the entire galaxy was passing through his mind. The ship's power, the ancient knowledge of the creators. It was all flooding into him at once. "The ship is yours to command," Seraph's voice whispered in his mind. "Unlock its true potential. Use it wisely." The images that flooded Elian's mind were overwhelming. He saw the creators of Hades' wrath, an ancient race that had mastered the art of war and preservation. Their technology was beyond anything Elian could have imagined, and Hades' wrath had been designed to carry out their final mission, to protect the galaxy from the forces that would tear it apart. But the creators had vanished, leaving only their ship behind. And now, it was Elian's turn to continue their legacy. The vision faded and Elian was left standing in the chamber, his heart pounding. He felt different, as if he had been changed by what he had seen. The power of the ship was now a part of him, a part of his very soul. But the questions remained. What was the galaxy's true enemy? What threat had the creators foreseen? And how could Elian, a mere scavenger, be the one to stop it? He didn't have all the answers yet. But one thing was certain. Hades' wrath was no longer just a warship. It was his weapon, his responsibility. And with it, he would either save the galaxy or see it destroyed. Elian's fingers tightened around the controls of Hades' wrath as the warship glided through space. His mind raced with the new knowledge he had gained in the ancient station. The purpose of the warship, the race that created it, and the responsibility now resting on his shoulders. The creators had designed Hades' wrath as both a weapon and a protector, meant to stop a galactic catastrophe, But what that catastrophe was, Elian still didn't fully understand yet. He knew one thing for sure. He couldn't hide from what was coming. The galaxy had noticed the reactivation of Hades' wrath, and factions from every corner were closing in. The Federation, the Kresh Dominion, even the Zircons, they all wanted control of the warship. But it wasn't just their greed Elian had to fear. There was something more, something deeper. The vision he had seen in the ancient station had shown him that the true enemy wasn't just another warship or power-hungry empire. It was something far more dangerous. Seraph, Elian said, his voice steady despite the weight of what he had learned. What exactly are we facing? What's coming? The creators foresaw an event that would destroy the galaxy. Seraph's voice responded, calm yet heavy with the knowledge of ages. A force not of any one species but of many. The entities that threaten the galaxy are beyond the comprehension of even the greatest minds. Elian swallowed hard. What are they? They are the Voidborn, beings of pure entropy, born from the collapse of ancient stars. They seek to consume everything, life, matter, time itself. Elian stared at the stars outside the viewport, his mind reeling. He had heard stories of cosmic disasters, supernovae, and galactic collapses, but this was something new, something that sounded like the stuff of legend. But if the creators had designed Hades' wrath to stop them, it meant the threat was real. And now it was up to him to prevent the galaxy from falling into the same darkness. Suddenly the ship's sensors pinged. Multiple ships were approaching. His enemies. The Federation, the Kresh Dominion, and the Zircons all had come for the warship. But Elian knew now that he couldn't just fight them off. The real battle was against the Voidborn. The factions might be powerful, but the Voidborn were something else entirely. Seraph, we need to go to the center of the galaxy, Elian said, his tone resolute. I know the warships are coming, but the Voidborn, they must be stopped. We have to find a way to stop them. Affirmative, Seraph replied, heading to the galactic core. The ship will prepare for the journey. We must act quickly. Elian navigated Hades' wrath toward the galactic core where the ancient battle would be fought. His thoughts raced. He had never considered himself a leader, but now, with the weight of the galaxy's future on his shoulders, he had no choice but to rise to the occasion. He was the pilot of Hades' wrath. The ship's power and the knowledge of the creators were now his to wield. It was time to face the real battle, and to protect the galaxy, not just from greed and war, but from the threat that would consume it all. As the warship sped toward the center of the galaxy, the Federation and Kresh forces were close behind, their ships closing in on the warship. Elian could feel the tension mounting in the cockpit, the pressure of knowing that he was running out of time. Seraph, Elian asked, his voice quiet but firm, can we handle them all? The ship's power is immense, but we must conserve energy for the greater battle, Seraph warned. The factions are powerful, but they are not the true threat. Focus on avoiding them. We must reach the core before they do. Elian nodded, knowing what he had to do. He had no intention of letting the factions stand in his way. He had already made it clear to the Federation that he would not surrender Hades' wrath. But now, with the Voidborn on the horizon, there was no time for political games. As they neared the galactic core, the space around them began to warp. The stars seemed to fade, and the very fabric of space itself felt off. Elian gripped the controls tighter, his senses alert. Something was wrong. The Voidborn were near. Seraph, what's happening? Elian asked urgently. The Voidborn are already here, Seraph responded gravely. The ship's systems are detecting their presence. Prepare for engagement. Suddenly, the very stars themselves seemed to vanish, leaving only a black emptiness. Elian's heart pounded in his chest as Hades' wrath shuddered. The ship's sensors went haywire as energy waves crashed through space, distorting everything in their path. Then, from the darkness, they came. The Voidborn were not like any enemy Elian had ever seen. They were massive, swirling forms of dark energy, with tendrils that seemed to reach out and consume everything in their path. Their presence was overwhelming, like a black hole made of pure destruction, their forms shifting and pulsating with a power that made Elian feel small and insignificant. The warship's alarm screamed as the Voidborn approached. Elian's hands flew over the controls, trying to steady Hades' wrath, but the force of the Voidborn's presence made it feel like the very fabric of space was tearing apart. Seraph, how do we stop them? Elian shouted over the growing noise. The Voidborn are creatures of pure entropy. Their existence is the antithesis of all life. The ship's weapons can damage them, but only for a short time. You must use the power of the Creator's technology to trap them. The warship was designed to create a field that can isolate them, trapping them in a pocket of space where they can be neutralized. Elian's mind raced. He didn't have time to think. He needed to act, and fast. "Do it, Seraph," Elian said, his voice unwavering. "Engage the trap, now!" The warship's systems came to life as Hades' wrath charged its energy reserves. Elian could feel the ship shifting beneath him, the immense power of the ancient technology building within the ship. The Voidborn surged forward, their tendrils reaching out, but the warship responded in kind. Energy beams shot out from the ship's weapons, striking the Voidborn's tendrils, causing them to writhe and hiss in the dark void. Elian fired again, and again until the entire chamber around him was filled with energy blasts. The Voidborn recoiled, but they were not easily defeated. As Elian's weapons tore through them, the ship's engines flared, and the power of the Creators surged to the forefront. The air around Elian crackled with energy, and the stars outside began to swirl. The ship's final weapon, a containment field, activated. A massive, invisible barrier formed around the Voidborn, trapping them in a pocket of space. Elian's heart raced as the warship held them in place, the Voidborn struggling against the field but unable to escape. He could feel the ship's power, and he knew that this was only the beginning. But for now they had won. The Voidborn had been contained, but there was still work to be done. The factions would come, and they would not give up so easily. The galaxy's fate still hung in the balance. Elian took a deep breath, his eyes focused on the stars ahead. He wasn't just a scavenger anymore. He wasn't just a pilot. He was the protector of the galaxy, and Hades' wrath was his weapon.